Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Lawrence Van, and of course, I host Wealth Academy podcast. And today, I just want to wish everyone a happy Martin Luther King Day here, January the 17th, 2022. And I just want to share a few things. I normally will have radio interviews on Dr. King's Day to just share my knowledge about him. But today I decided to do it on my podcast, which is a great platform for doing so. Well, Dr. King and his impact on my life really kind of runs down a pattern with my family. Dr. King was born a year before my father was born, and he was born 4 years before my mother was born. So it's that generation which has some really amazing people. And Dr. King, he was a really exceptional individual. I don't know about you, but in my household and in my community in North Carolina, most everyone's house that you would go into would have a picture of Dr. King, and they would have a picture of President Kennedy on the wall. And I guess what's synonymous about that is the fact that here were two people from two totally different backgrounds, and they really were working towards the same goal, and that was civil rights for all Americans. And for Dr. King, it not only did he make a difference in America, but around the world. And so I never met Dr. King because I wasn't not even a teenager at the time that he left the earthly realm. However, over the years, when I eventually became an adult and I was working in the Pentagon, and I had some friends that worked for a member of Congress, and they told me, "Hey, I would love for you to come with me to this event, and I want to introduce you to Mrs. Coretta Scott King." And I just could not believe it. But sure enough, on the night of this event in 2001, I was going through the convention center in Washington, D.C., and lo and behold, my friend, she introduced me to Mrs. Coretta Scott King. And so that was the closest I ever came to experiencing the presence of someone who knew Dr. King, Mrs. Coretta Scott King. And just before that, I had one Air Force assignment in Atlanta, and I it was called Education with Industry. And I would always go down to the King Center. I went down to Dr. King's house where he lived, and I would go on a tour. I was on the tour so much that I could actually give the tour. And I really enjoyed it because I learned a lot, and they have amazing historical items there and library. And so, in many ways, I learned through him about this peaceful nonviolence and the need for people to love one another. And I think it's so important today. In fact, my mantra for 2022 is love. And the reason why it is, most people think it's in a relationship with someone else, but I'm talking about agape love. That means you love someone because it's the right thing to do. And so it's not an element of trying to create violence with anyone or to fight anyone, but it's more so to love other people, even if you don't know them, to treat people with dignity and respect, is what my parents and grandparents taught me. And so Dr. King had a big role in my life. So I spent that time in Atlanta, came to the Pentagon, and then when I had an event in Washington, D.C., I was introduced to Mrs. Coretta Scott King. And fast forward from that, I started a radio show after I retired. And after that, I received a call from a member of the staff for Bernice King, Dr. King's and Mrs. Coretta Scott King's daughter. And I interviewed her on my radio show. And so even though I never met him, I still find myself in that same lane in regards to just having a lot of respect for his family, for what he did. So his legacy remains on today as much as it ever have, even when he was living. But not only here in America, but also around the world, that there are peaceful, nonviolent protests that are being made. And the powers that be, of course, they don't like that because they find that that is when people start thinking for themselves, all of a sudden that becomes a problem. But the bottom line is only God is the one who gives us freedom, not a government, not government leaders. not business leaders. No one has that authority except God. And the reason why is because He created us. And so for me, learning as much as I can about Dr. King and his family has made a difference in my life. And I think that difference is one of understanding. And I have this book that I purchased at his memorial in Washington, D.C. And it's called The Essential Writings and Speeches of Martin Luther King Jr. And this is what the book looks like right here. And so I read through there, and it helps me to understand not only things that took place back when he was in his leadership role, not only as a pastor, but a civil rights leader with all the other people who also was supporting him and they were united, but also for today, that we often find ourselves revisiting the same issues that were revisited in the late 50s, the early 60s, and moving into the 70s and beyond. And what gives me just a little bit of a different understanding is because I did work on Capitol Hill and seeing the legislation that comes out. So I work for a member of Congress. In fact, I work for Congressman Patrick J. Kennedy from Rhode Island, who's a nephew of President John Kennedy and the son of Ted Kennedy. And so I have a more unique perspective because the Kennedy family and the King family, they connected and they still connect to this day in terms of their families. And so the thing that I want to just say to people is that the one way for us to turn this country around, in spite of some of the things that are currently happen in Congress, is that we have to work together to be united, because if we do not unite, it would be very easy for another country to come in and take over. And you might think that, well, Paul is crazy. No, it's possible because the different aspects of the government have been damaged to the extent that we need to redo a lot of the institutions that we have in America as we know it today. And so primarily, what we all have to do is just be more proactive in talking to our representatives in Congress, in the U.S. House of Representatives, as well as the U.S. Senate. Right now, the way it looks like it's not a bicameral approach. In other words, the Senate and the House are not working together, and the different political parties aren't working together for the good of the citizens of this country. And the division is not going to help. And it's not going to help because we get further and further behind. And so I'm looking at what's taking place this year, and with the midterm elections and other aspects of our country. uh, let's just hope we don't implode, because the signs are really kind of pointing that way. And it's not just me saying that just to be saying it, but even back when I was a child in the 70s, things were not as bad as they are now. Things in the 80s are not as bad as they are now. And the only way to be able to turn this around is through love, through understanding, through compassion, and through working together to unite. And we have a chance to do that, but it may take a little bit longer than perhaps projected. So, getting back to the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, I wish his family well as they celebrate his birthday today. He made a difference. He was a brilliant man, and he did a lot of great things, which many of us enjoy today. All people, not just some people, but all people. So that's really what I wanted to talk about today, and just want to give you some points to consider and to look at some reflections of how your life was, let's say 10, 15, 20 years ago compared to today. We're in the 21st century, we're in the year 2022, and things should be getting better. They should not be getting worse. And so, in order to make things better, we have to take action to make things better. and that is reaching out to our fellow man, reaching out to everyone who really wants to see America to be the great country that has been for many, many years. So I'm going to end this particular episode, and I hope that you glean something from it, and that you will continue to celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King's Day. And of course, it's a day on, not a day off. And right now, I do know that Martin Luther King III, him and his family marched in Washington, D.C. today for the getting the voting rights bill passed. And so it's coming up, I believe, tomorrow, Tuesday, January the 18th, or it may just get pushed back to a later time. But I believe that's really what the initiative is for the year 2022 on Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday. So again, Paul Laurence Vann, when I served in the military, I served all people. I did not serve because of a particular political party. I didn't serve because of a particular gender, ethnicity, or anything else. My job, as well as the other military personnel, was to serve everyone, everyone, not just a certain group of people, but every citizen in the United States of America and the territories and possessions. And that's really what we need to get to. We need to really get back to serving everyone and not looking at any differences between people, no difference between the parties, political parties of people, but as one America. And that's the only way that we're going to survive. So again, have a great day. Again, I'm your host, Paul Laurence Vann. I wanted to do this particular episode on my podcast today. And because I consider it to be a special day here in the infancy of the new year of 2022. Have a great day, everyone. Remember our mantra, wealth is more than just money. And don't forget, we have a lot of amazing guests coming up in the next 2 weeks, and I want you to join me for it. And also go to www.wealthacademypodcast.com and listen to over 180 different episodes with guests from the United States and all over the world. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you on the next episode of Wealth Academy Podcast.